Chosen one, do you feel that? That weight pressing down on your chest right now? That strange heaviness that woke you up at 3 a.m. last Tuesday, and the Tuesday before that? And the one before that? What if I told you that Tuesday isn't just another day on your calendar? What if I told you that while you've been dismissing it as coincidence, hell has been circling that day like a vulture, waiting for the exact moment when God's about to birth something miraculous in your life? Here's the truth that's going to shake you. The enemy doesn't attack random days. He attacks appointed times. And Tuesday, that ordinary, forgettable, middle-of-the-week Tuesday, is about to become the most dangerous 24 hours of your spiritual life. Something is moving toward you this Tuesday. Not a storm in the sky, a storm in the spirit. I can feel it even as I speak these words. A convergence. A collision between what heaven has been preparing in secret and what one single mistake so small you won't even recognize it could completely destroy. You see, you've lived 70, 80, 90 years on this earth. You've survived wars, buried loved ones, weathered financial crashes. You know something young people don't. Blessings don't usually get stolen by strangers breaking down your door. They get sabotaged from inside your own atmosphere, by your own hands, by decisions that seem harmless in the moment but carry eternal consequences. God's preparation is fragile before fullness, beloved. Like a seed, the exact second it cracks open in the dark soil. It's alive, it's moving, it's about to burst through the surface, but in that sacred moment of transition, it's vulnerable. One wrong move, one careless step, one moment of spiritual sleep. And Tuesday is when that seed is breaking open in your life. Before I go deeper, and I'm about to show you exactly what this mistake looks like and how to avoid it, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and let the Holy Spirit lead your heart. But right now, right this second, if something in your spirit is already trembling, if you feel that ancient recognition rising in your chest, I need you to do something. Type "I'm listening" in the comments. Don't scroll past this. This is your signal to heaven that you're awake tonight, that you're ready to hear what most people will sleep through. Because what I'm about to reveal will either save what God is preparing for you, or explain why you lost it before you ever held it. The shadow is already falling across Tuesday. The question is, will you see it in time? Tell me something honest. Have you ever noticed how the worst spiritual attacks don't come dressed like monsters? How the enemy doesn't knock on your door announcing his presence? How the most dangerous moments of your life have almost always looked ordinary? What if the greatest threat to your breakthrough this week isn't some dramatic catastrophe, but something so subtle, so routine, so wrapped in the familiar rhythms of your daily life that you'll walk right past it without even blinking? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. God rarely reveals his tests in obvious ways. The Red Sea moment comes after years of slavery. The Promised Land appears after 40 years of wilderness. But the test shows up disguised as a Tuesday morning conversation, a phone call that irritates you, a small inconvenience that triggers something ancient in your spirit, a moment so seemingly insignificant that hell is banking on you missing it entirely. You see, the devil is no fool. He's been studying you for 70, 80, 90 years. He knows your patterns. He knows what time you wake up. He knows which words make you defensive. He knows exactly which buttons to push to get you to react instead of respond. And he knows something else that should terrify you. He knows when God is about to move. Think about Job for a moment. Job 1-6 tells us, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them." Notice that. Satan showed up on a specific day, not randomly, not casually. He came when heaven was about to make a declaration about Job's integrity. The attack was timed, calculated, strategic. Tuesday is an alignment day, beloved. I'm not talking about astrology or New Age mysticism. I'm talking about divine timing that the enemy watches like a hawk circling prey. Throughout Scripture, we see God moving on specific days, at specific hours, in specific seasons. And when those moments arrive, spiritual resistance intensifies. You've lived through wars, losses, pandemics. You buried your husband on a Thursday. You got that cancer diagnosis on a Monday. You lost your life savings on a Friday afternoon in 2008. You know something that younger generations haven't learned yet. The big disasters don't hit without small warnings first. There's always a tremor before the earthquake. Always a drop in pressure before the storm. Always a whisper before the shout. Some of you woke up with heaviness this week, and you don't know why. Your body aches, but the doctor says you're fine. Your chest feels tight, but your heart is healthy. You can't sleep past 3 a.m., and when you do wake up, there's this unexplainable dread sitting on your sternum like a stone. You've been dismissing it as anxiety, as getting older, as nothing important. But what if it's not nothing? What if your spirit is picking up frequencies your mind can't interpret yet? What if that heaviness is actually spiritual radar detecting incoming warfare? Ephesians 6:12 warns us, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world." Notice Paul didn't say we might wrestle. He said we wrestle. Present tense, continuous action. You are in a fight right now, whether you feel it or not. But here's what most people miss about spiritual warfare. The enemy's strategy is not to attack your body first. It's to attack your atmosphere. Not your home, but your heart. Not your circumstances, but your choices. He doesn't need to destroy you physically if he can get you to destroy your own blessing spiritually. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're standing on a glass bridge, suspended over a canyon. The bridge is strong enough to hold you, but it's also fragile enough that the wrong step, the wrong weight distribution, the wrong moment of imbalance could send cracks, spiderwebbing across the surface beneath your feet. You wouldn't jump up and down on that bridge, would you? You wouldn't test its limits. You'd walk carefully, deliberately, aware that your very next step matters. That's where you are right now. God has been building something beneath your feet. A bridge from where you've been to where He's taking you. From lack to abundance. From sickness to healing. From loneliness to purpose. From forgotten to appointed. The bridge is strong. The bridge is real. The bridge is almost complete. But Tuesday is when you take the step. And the enemy knows that one wrong move, one moment of spiritual carelessness, one decision made from your flesh instead of your spirit, could crack everything. You feel that, don't you? That sense that something is about to shift. That awareness that you're closer to breakthrough than you've ever been, but also more vulnerable than you realize. 2 Corinthians 2:11 tells us we must not be ignorant of his devices. The word devices in Greek is noema. It means schemes, plots, purposes, minds. Satan has a strategy against your Tuesday, and ignorance won't protect you. Only awareness will. Here's what breaks my heart. I've watched too many saints get right to the edge of their miracle and lose it in the final hour. Not because God changed his mind, not because they weren't worthy, but because they didn't recognize the test when it came dressed in ordinary clothes. The woman with the issue of blood was one touch away from healing, but she had to press through a crowd that pushed back. Matthew 9:20 says, she came behind him, she had to fight for position. One moment of giving up, 1 second of this is too hard, and she would have bled for the rest of her life. Moses was one obedient word away from entering Canaan, but he struck the rock in anger instead of speaking to it. Numbers 20:12 records God's response, "Because ye believed me not, ye shall not bring this congregation into the land." 40 years of faithfulness. undone by one moment of frustration. You're that close, chosen one, that close, and the enemy knows it. So he's not coming with something obvious. He's coming with something that looks harmless, something that feels justified, something that seems so small it couldn't possibly matter. And this brings us closer to the mistake, but I can't name it yet. Not because I want to withhold it from you, but because if I hand it to you too early, you won't feel its full weight. You won't understand why something so seemingly insignificant could carry such devastating consequences. What I need you to understand first is this: the battlefield isn't where you think it is, and the weapon being used against you isn't what you're watching for. So let me ask you one final question before we go deeper. What if the mistake you're about to make on Tuesday is something you've already made 100 times before, but this time the timing makes it fatal? You know what nobody talks about? The war that happens after everyone leaves, after the grandchildren go home, after the phone calls end, after you turn off the TV and the house falls into that thick, heavy silence that presses against your chest like a stone. You've survived everything, haven't you? You survived the depression, or you heard the stories from those who did. You survived wars, some of you fought in them. You buried parents, siblings, maybe even children. You weathered divorces, bankruptcies, diagnoses that should have destroyed you. The world looks at you and sees a survivor, a veteran of life, someone who's earned their rest. But here's what they don't see. Here's what your own family doesn't understand when they pat your hand and tell you everything's fine. The worst battles you fight now don't happen on battlefields or in hospital rooms. They happen in the hallway at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep. They happen in the silence after Sunday dinner when everyone rushes back to their own lives. They happen in your own mind, in rooms where you're alone with thoughts that loop like a broken record, playing the same painful melody over and over again. Did I matter? Do I still matter? Does anyone really see me anymore? You sit in that chair, the one that's molded to your body after all these years, and you feel invisible. Your children love you, sure, but they don't really listen anymore, do they? They hear your words, but they're already thinking about their next meeting, their next crisis, their next everything. You've become background music in your own family, a fixture, expected to be there, but not really. Present, not really seen. And when you try to speak wisdom from 70, 80, 90 years of living, they smile, they nod, they change the subject. Like you're a sweet old memory instead of a living, breathing soul who still has fire in your bones and purpose pulsing through your veins. Some of you are carrying grief so heavy you can barely breathe. Your spouse of 50 years is gone, and half of you went with them. You wake up every morning, and for just a split second, you forget they're not there, and then reality crashes in like a freight train. Again, every single morning. The bed is too big. The house is too quiet. Your own heartbeat sounds like thunder in the silence. And you haven't told anyone how deep that pain goes, have you? Because who wants to hear an old person complain? Who has time for your tears when everyone's so busy with their own lives? So you smile at church. You say you're fine when the neighbor asks. You pretend that loneliness isn't eating you alive from the inside out, but heaven heard it. Every silent scream, every swallowed sob, every night you whispered into the darkness, God, do you still see me? Am I still valuable to you? Or am I just waiting to die? Listen to me carefully, beloved. This internal war, this battle with thoughts that tell you you're forgotten, finished, irrelevant, this is exactly where the enemy wants you on Tuesday. Because when God is about to birth something miraculous, when heaven is about to break open your next chapter, the devil doesn't send an army. He sends a whisper, a thought, a feeling, a lie wrapped in the voice of your own exhaustion. Tuesday magnifies the emotional echo you thought you silenced years ago. That wound from your daughter, who hasn't called in 3 weeks. On Tuesday, it'll feel like abandonment. That moment when your son spoke over you at Thanksgiving like you weren't even talking. On Tuesday, it'll replay in your mind with fresh pain. That doctor who treated you like a number instead of a person. On Tuesday, you'll feel every ounce of that dismissal again. Why Tuesday? Because the enemy knows your pattern. He's studied you for decades. He knows that Tuesday is when your guard is down. Monday, you're still recovering from the weekend. Wednesday, you're pushing toward the end of the week. But Tuesday, you're tired. Tuesday, your defenses are low. Tuesday, the silence feels heavier. And here's the trap, here's the mistake that will destroy what God is preparing for you. When those thoughts come on Tuesday, when that emotional echo starts playing its familiar, painful song, you're going to want to agree with it. You're going to want to believe the lie that says, "This is just how it is now. I'm old, I'm alone, my time is over." The mistake isn't feeling the pain, chosen one. The mistake is partnering with it. The mistake is letting that internal war convince you that God's forgotten you, that your assignment expired with your youth, that the breakthrough you've been praying for is meant for someone younger, someone more relevant, someone who still matters to the world. King David knew this battle. Psalm 142, verse 4. "I looked on my right hand and beheld, but there was no man that would know me. Refuge failed me. No man cared for my soul." David, the warrior, the king, the man after God's own heart, felt invisible, forgotten, alone in the cave while everyone else moved on with their lives. But here's what David did that you must do on Tuesday. Verse 5, "I cried unto thee, O Lord, I said, Thou art my refuge and my portion in the land of the living. Even in the cave, even in the silence, even when no one else saw him, David knew God did." Some of you haven't told anyone how heavy your chest feels at night, how the weight of invisibility crushes you, how you wonder if you'll die without ever fulfilling what you were truly put on this earth to do. But heaven heard it, and God is not done with you. The internal war is real. The pain is valid. The loneliness cuts deep. But if you let that war win on Tuesday, if you agree with the echo instead of the truth, you will sabotage the very blessing God has been preparing while you've been suffering. If this is speaking to you right now, if you feel the weight of these words settling into places you thought were sealed off, whisper Amen in the comments. It's not for me. It's your sign to heaven that you're still fighting, that you refuse to let the internal war destroy what God is building. Because what's coming on Tuesday isn't just another day of survival, it's a test. And the question is, will you recognize the battlefield before the war is lost? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Tuesday operates like no other day in your week. It functions as a spiritual magnifying lens. What seems microscopic on Monday becomes massive by Wednesday. And the enemy knows this. You see, most believers think spiritual warfare looks like dramatic battles, demon possession, visible attacks, obvious temptations. But after 70, 80 years of walking with God, you should know better. The devil doesn't need to send a demon when he can send a distraction. He doesn't need to launch an assault when he can plant a seed of irritation in your spirit at breakfast. Here's what heaven showed me that shook me to my core. Words are seeds. Your tone creates atmosphere. Your emotions open spiritual doorways. Think about that for a moment. Every single word you speak on Tuesday is planting something. Proverbs 18:21 says it plainly, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." Not death or life, death and life. Both present, both active, both waiting to see which one you'll release into your atmosphere. You remember, don't you? You remember when one sentence, just one careless sentence, spoken in anger, destroyed a relationship for 30 years. Your daughter stopped calling. Your son moved across the country. Your best friend from church never sat in the same pew again. It wasn't a war. It was a word. A single word on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon that you can still hear echoing in your memory decades later. That's the power of small doors. But here's where it gets terrifying. The enemy has studied your patterns for your entire life. He knows exactly which buttons to push, which memories to trigger, which fears to whisper about. And he knows that if he can shake you emotionally for just 30 seconds on Tuesday morning, he can delay the blessing God scheduled for 30 days from now. 30 seconds of anger derails 30 days of answered prayer. Let me show you how this works in the spiritual realm. When you wake up on Tuesday and that phone call comes, you know the one, the call that always irritates you, the person who always rubs you the wrong way. Your response in that moment isn't just about that conversation. It's about the atmosphere you're creating for the entire week. James 3:5 warns us. The tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. One spark, one comment, one reaction, and suddenly the forest God planted in your future goes up in flames. You think I'm being dramatic? Ask yourself this. How many times has a small argument on a Tuesday morning poisoned your entire week? How many times has one critical comment you made come back to haunt you? How many times have you said, I don't know what got into me that day? I'll tell you what got into you. A doorway opened, and something walked through. Because here's the spiritual mechanic most people never understand. Your emotional state creates frequencies. Those frequencies attract spiritual entities. When you operate in peace, you attract angelic activity. When you operate in chaos, you attract demonic assignment. Tuesday is a tuning fork. Whatever frequency you set in the morning will resonate all week long. Now, some of you are thinking, but I'm old. I've earned the right to be cranky sometimes. I've been through enough. People should understand. And you're absolutely right, you have been through enough. You've survived wars, buried children, watched your body betray you piece by piece. You've earned rest. But the enemy doesn't care about what you've earned. He cares about what you're carrying. And if God is preparing to release the greatest blessing of your final years, the devil will use the smallest irritation to make you forfeit it. Think about Esau. One bowl of soup. Genesis 25-34 tells us he despised his birthright for one meal. Not because he was evil, because he was tired, hungry, irritated. And in that moment of weakness, he traded his eternal inheritance for temporary satisfaction. How many of you have traded your peace for the satisfaction of being right? How many blessings have you postponed because you couldn't let that comment slide? How many divine appointments have you missed because you were too angry to hear God's voice redirecting you? The smallest door opens the largest consequence. One harsh word to your caregiver on Tuesday morning. One complaint about the weather that shifts your whole attitude. One moment of bitterness toward the friend who forgot to call. These aren't just bad moments. They're doorways. And once a door opens in the spirit realm, it doesn't close just because you calm down. Ephesians 4:26-7 commands us, do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. A foothold, that's all he needs. Not your whole house, just 1 foot in the door, and from that position, he can whisper, delay, distort, destroy. So here's the question that should be burning in your spirit right now. What door did you open last Tuesday that you haven't closed yet? What seed did you plant with your words that's growing into a weed in your garden? What atmosphere did you create that's still hanging over your week like smog? Because we are moments away from the mistake, the specific, singular error that happens on Tuesday mornings that most believers make without even recognizing it. And when you hear it, everything is going to click into place. Listen to me very carefully. Chosen one. What I'm about to tell you might sound too simple to be true. You might even feel tempted to dismiss it. But that dismissal, that exact reaction, is how the enemy has been winning for decades. The mistake that will destroy what God is preparing for you this Tuesday is this: a single argument. One conversation that spirals. One moment when irritation becomes confrontation with someone you love. I can already hear some of you thinking, that's it, just an argument? I've had 1,000 arguments in my life. And that's exactly why this is so dangerous. You've normalized the poison. But here's what you don't see happening in the invisible realm. When you engage in conflict on a day heaven has marked for breakthrough, you're not just exchanging words. You're opening spiritual doors. You're giving legal access to forces that have been waiting, circling for the exact moment when your blessing is about to land. Think about it. You've lived long enough to know this truth. The worst fights in your life never happened on random days. They happened right before weddings, right before promotions, right before reconciliations, right before the miracle you'd been praying for was about to manifest. That's not coincidence, beloved. That's strategy. Hell's strategy. Proverbs 15:1 says it plainly. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. But do you understand what's really being said here? It's not just about keeping peace. It's about protecting what's trying to be born. Your blessing cannot land on poisoned ground. Let me paint you a picture that's going to cut deep. Imagine you've spent 70 years building a garden, 70 years of careful planting, patient watering, faithful tending. You've pulled weeds in the scorching Sunday. You've protected tender shoots from storms. You've waited through winters that felt endless, trusting that spring would come. And now, right now, the rarest flower you've ever planted is about to bloom. Something you've never seen before. Something God Himself planted in that soil. It's been underground for decades, but this Tuesday, this specific Tuesday, the bud is pushing through the earth. But there's poison in a bottle at the edge of your garden. One careless moment, one splash of bitterness, one spill of harsh words. And that flower, the one you've waited a lifetime to see, dies before it ever opens. That's what an argument does on a day of divine appointment. It doesn't just hurt feelings, it kills destinies. You spent your entire life keeping peace in your home, didn't you? You were the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over, the one who bit your tongue when you wanted to lash out, the one who chose silence over being right. Don't let one moment of spiritual sleep undo a lifetime of discipline, because here's what's really happening this Tuesday. The enemy has studied you. He knows your triggers. He knows exactly what will make you react. He knows that if your spouse says that one thing, if your child brings up that old wound, if your neighbor crosses that specific line, you'll snap. And he's been positioning those moments like landmines across your week, waiting for Tuesday to detonate them. The enemy doesn't want your strength, chosen one. He wants your reaction. He doesn't need to destroy you with a storm. He just needs you to destroy yourself with a sentence. One cutting remark, one raised voice, one moment when you choose being right over being blessed. James 1:19-20 warns us, "Let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God." Do you see it? Your wrath, your justified anger, your righteous indignation, your completely understandable frustration, it doesn't work God's righteousness. It works against it. And on Tuesday, when heaven is trying to work something unprecedented in your life, your reaction becomes the weapon hell uses to sabotage it. I know what some of you are feeling right now. You're thinking about that person who hurt you, that family member who keeps disrespecting you, that situation that's been boiling inside you for months. And you're thinking, but I have a right to speak up. I have a right to defend myself. You're absolutely right. You do have that right. But let me ask you something that's going to shake you to your core. Would you rather be right, or would you rather be blessed? Because this Tuesday, you can't have both. The blessing God is preparing requires something from you that feels impossible. It requires your silence when everything in you wants to scream. It requires your softness when you've earned the right to be hard. It requires you to refuse, absolutely refuse, to give the enemy your reaction. If you're ready to guard your mouth this Tuesday like it's the gate to your destiny because it is, type "I refuse" in the comments right now. I refuse to give the enemy my reaction. I refuse to poison my own garden. I refuse to let one argument steal what 70 years of faithfulness has earned. But knowing the mistake is only half the battle. Because what I'm about to show you next will reveal why this specific Tuesday carries a weight that no other day this year has carried, and what's waiting on the other side, if you can just keep your mouth closed long enough for God to open heaven. Listen to me very carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to tell you might be the most important thing you hear all year. You think the danger comes during the storm. You think the enemy attacks when you see the lightning, when you feel the thunder, when the wind is howling at your door. But that's not how spiritual warfare works at your level. Not anymore. Not after everything God has walked you through. The real attack comes in the quiet, in the calm, in that exhale moment when you think you've made it through. It comes Tuesday evening, around 6:24 p.m., right after dinner. You've survived the day. You navigated the tension. You kept your mouth shut when that comment came at you sideways. You didn't react when your daughter-in-law made that face. You didn't engage when your son questioned your decision about the money. You held your peace. You thought you won. And that's exactly when the aftershock hits. See, an aftershock doesn't announce itself like the main quake. The first earthquake, you feel it coming. The ground rumbles, the walls shake. You brace yourself. But the aftershock, it arrives when you've already put your guard down, when you've already exhaled, when you've already told yourself, "Thank God that's over." That's when the ceiling caves in. It won't sound like a fight, beloved. That's what makes it so deadly. It'll sound like concern. It'll sound like a reasonable question. It'll sound like someone who loves you just trying to understand why you're being so difficult, so stubborn, so unreasonable about something that seems so simple. Your spouse will look at you across the kitchen table and say something that sounds innocent. "Honey, I've been thinking about what you said earlier. Are you sure you heard God right about this? Because it doesn't really make sense to me." Or your adult child will call you right before bed. "Mom, Dad and I are worried about you. This decision you're making, it's not like you. Are you feeling okay? Maybe we should talk to the doctor about your medications." 4 simple sentences, wrapped in love, delivered with concern, but carrying the venom of hell itself. Because here's what they don't know, and here's what you need to understand right now. The enemy doesn't need to make you angry anymore. He tried that earlier in the day, and you passed that test. So now he's switching tactics. Now he's going to make you doubt. Doubt is deadlier than rage. Rage burns out. But doubt burrows in. It whispers. It waits. It finds that soft place in your spirit where you're already questioning yourself, and it presses hard. Think about Eve in the garden. Genesis 3:1 records the serpent's strategy. Did God really say? Not an accusation, a question, innocent, reasonable. The kind of question that sounds like it's trying to help you think more clearly. But that question changed human history forever. Here's what breaks my heart, dear one. You're sitting there right now, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can already feel it, can't you? That conversation that's coming. That moment when someone you love is going to look at you with genuine concern and make you feel crazy for trusting what God whispered to your spirit, and you're going to be tired. It's Tuesday evening. You've already fought invisible battles all day long. Your body hurts. Your mind is exhausted. Your spirit feels stretched thin as paper. And now someone who shares your bed, someone who sits at your table, someone whose opinion actually matters to you, is looking at you like you've lost your mind. This is the aftershock, beloved, and it's designed to make you cave when you're too weary to stand. But listen to what Jesus said in Matthew 10:36. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household, not strangers, not the world out there, the people in your house. The ones who know exactly which buttons to push, exactly which fears to trigger, exactly how to make their concerns sound like wisdom when it's really warfare. I need you to hear this, and I need you to hear it deep. The test doesn't happen when you expect it. It comes when the atmosphere feels safe again, when you've let your guard down, when you think the danger has passed. That Tuesday evening conversation? That's not your spouse talking. That's not your child expressing concern. That's the enemy's last-ditch effort to get you to abort what God has been preparing for 9 months in your spirit. Because here's what hell knows that you're just now remembering. If you can survive this aftershock, if you can stand firm when the people you love most are questioning your sanity, if you can hold on to what God said when everyone around you is saying you're wrong, the blessing comes quickly, not eventually, not someday. Quickly, but you have to survive Tuesday night. You have to make it through that conversation without compromising, without explaining yourself into doubt, without letting their reasonable questions become your spiritual crisis. So, what do you do when the aftershock comes? When the person sitting across from you makes you feel like you're crazy for trusting God? When their logic sounds so reasonable and your faith feels so foolish? Now listen to me carefully. Chosen one, I'm about to give you 3 actions that will save what God is preparing for you this Tuesday. Not theories, not religious platitudes. 3 battlefield strategies that have been tested in the furnace of real life by people who've walked 80, 90 years on this earth and learned what actually works when hell comes knocking. You ready? Because what I'm about to tell you goes against everything this culture has taught you about. Standing up for yourself, speaking your mind, and never backing down. First, choose sacred silence. I can already hear some of you bristling. You mean just let them disrespect me? Let them walk all over me? I'm supposed to just sit there and take it? No, beloved. I'm telling you to do something far more powerful than fighting back. I'm telling you to become untouchable. Silence is not weakness. Silence is armor. Proverbs 17:28 says it plainly. Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. But this isn't about appearing wise to others. This is about protecting what's sacred. When you open your mouth in anger on Tuesday, you're not just releasing words, you're opening a door. And what comes through that door can destroy a blessing that's been 30 years in the making. Think about Jesus before Pilate, the King of Kings standing before a corrupt politician who had the power to kill him. And what did Jesus do? Matthew 27:14 tells us, Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. The governor was amazed because he'd never seen power like that. The power to remain silent when you have every right to defend yourself. That's the power you need this Tuesday. Your daughter-in-law says something cutting about how you raised your son. Your neighbor makes another passive-aggressive comment about your lawn. Your own child speaks to you with disrespect that would have gotten them backhanded 40 years ago. And every fiber in your body wants to put them in their place, wants to remind them who you are, wants to unleash 7 decades of wisdom on their foolishness. Don't do it. That's not the battle God is asking you to fight this Tuesday. He's asking you to guard the gate, to protect the atmosphere, to keep the door closed that the enemy is trying to pry open through your own mouth. Second, guard the atmosphere of your home. Your home is not just 4 walls and a roof. It's a spiritual territory, and on Tuesday, that territory is under siege. Turn your house into a sanctuary, not a courtroom. I'm talking to those of you who've let your living room become a war room. The TV blaring news that pumps poison into your spirit 24 hours a day. The phone ringing with gossip disguised as just checking in. The drama walking through your front door every time certain people visit. Joshua 24:15 didn't stutter. As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Not just you personally, your household. The atmosphere you create under your roof. This Tuesday, you need to do something radical. Turn off the news. Put the phone on silent. If certain people show up unannounced, you don't have to answer the door just because they're knocking. Your home is your sanctuary, and you are the gatekeeper. I know what you're thinking, but that's rude. But that's not how I was raised. But what will they think? Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. What matters more? Their opinion of your manners or God's opinion of your obedience? You've spent your whole life caring what people think. You've sacrificed your peace to keep everyone else comfortable. You've opened your door, your heart, your sanctuary to people who brought nothing but chaos. And where has it gotten you? This Tuesday, you're making a different choice. Third, replace reaction with revelation. Here's the secret that will change everything. Before you speak, ask yourself one question. Is this sentence building my blessing or breaking it? Not, am I right? Not, do they deserve to hear this? But will these words protect what God is preparing, or will they destroy it? Proverbs 18:21 cuts straight to the bone. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Life or death, building or breaking, there's no neutral ground. When your son calls Tuesday afternoon, and his tone is already sharp, already loaded with criticism, already baiting you into an argument, you've got about 3 seconds to make a choice. You can react from your flesh and say what you feel, or you can respond from your spirit and say what builds. Son, I love you. Let's talk when we're both in a better place. Then you hang up, not in anger, in authority. That's not weakness, beloved. That's warfare. You just refused to give the enemy the opening he needed. You just protected your Tuesday. You just saved your blessing. You've fought long battles all your life. This one requires stillness, not strength. This one requires you to be the oak tree that bends in the storm but doesn't break. This one requires you to remember that you're not fighting people, you're fighting principalities. And the weapons of this warfare are not carnal. So let me ask you right now, are you willing to guard your mouth this Tuesday? Are you willing to protect your atmosphere? Are you willing to choose revelation over reaction? If you're making that choice right now, if you're deciding that your blessing matters more than your pride, write it in the comments. I choose peace. Because what happens next? What God does when you guard what He's preparing, that's when the real miracle begins. Now that you know the mistake, you must understand the consequences. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to show you isn't theory. This isn't Sunday school philosophy. This is what happens in the unseen realm when you fall into Tuesday's trap. And it's darker than you think. Picture this. You're standing in an empty subway tunnel at midnight. The platform is silent. You can hear your own heartbeat echoing off the concrete walls. In the distance, there's a train coming. You can see its light. You can feel the rumble beneath your feet. That train is your breakthrough. That train is everything God has been preparing for 70, 80, 90 years of your faithful life. But then you speak. One word, one reaction, one moment of spiritual carelessness on Tuesday. And the train stops. Not crashes. Stops. The light is still there. The promise is still real. But it hovers, suspended, waiting. And you're left standing on that platform in the dark, wondering what just happened. This is what occurs in the spirit realm when a chosen one argues on Tuesday. Doors don't slam shut, they delay. Favor doesn't disappear, it pauses. Blessings don't get cancelled. They hover but cannot land. Your atmosphere becomes static, frequency disrupted. Like trying to tune into a radio station but all you hear is white noise. You've lived through decades where one wrong decision changed everything. You know this. You remember that argument in 1987 that cost you a relationship. That heated conversation in 1995 that lost you a job. That moment of pride in 2003 that broke a family bond. You know how small things create earthquakes in your life. One reaction, one moment, one sentence. That's all it takes. The Bible shows us this pattern everywhere. Look at Moses. Numbers 20. After 40 years of leading Israel through the wilderness, after watching God part seas and rain manna from heaven, he made one mistake. God told him to speak to the rock. But Moses was angry, frustrated with the complaining people. So instead of speaking, he struck the rock twice. Water still came, The miracle still happened, but God said in verse 12, "Because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them." One moment of frustration, one deviation from the instruction, and Moses lost his promised land. Think about that. 40 years of faithful service. One Tuesday moment of anger. And the consequence wasn't punishment. It was prevention. God was protecting what Moses couldn't handle in the wrong spiritual state. This is what happens when you engage in Tuesday warfare. You don't lose your calling. You delay your entry. You don't forfeit the blessing. You just can't receive it yet. Because the atmosphere you created, through argument, through discord, through speaking when you should have been silent, has made the air around you too thick for heaven to break through. Dear one, you're standing at the edge of the greatest season of your life. After all those years of waiting, after all those prayers that seemed to bounce off the ceiling, after all those nights you cried yourself to sleep wondering if God remembered your address, He's been preparing something so magnificent that if it arrived in the wrong atmosphere, it would shatter. So when Tuesday comes and that temptation rises, when your grandchild says something that triggers you, when that neighbor makes that comment, when your own mind starts replaying old hurts and your mouth wants to release old grudges, the enemy is banking on your reaction. He's counting on you speaking too soon, responding too quickly, engaging in conflict that has nothing to do with your destiny but everything to do with derailing it. But this time, the consequences are not punishment, they are prevention. God would rather delay your blessing than deliver it into chaos. He would rather pause your breakthrough than release it into an atmosphere contaminated by strife. Proverbs 15:1 says it plainly, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." Tuesday is testing which voice you'll use. The voice of the old you, or the voice of the anointed you. Because here's what breaks my heart. I've watched too many seniors lose their final chapter miracles because they couldn't control their Tuesday tongue. Too many grandmothers who were about to see prodigal grandchildren return but spoke a curse instead of a blessing. Too many grandfathers who were inches from financial breakthrough but chose argument over silence. The train was coming, the light was visible, but the atmosphere was wrong. So let me ask you something that should terrify you into obedience. How many blessings have you already delayed because you didn't know Tuesday was sacred? How many doors remained closed because your words created static on the exact day heaven was trying to transmit? If you refuse to let Tuesday sabotage your blessing, if you're ready to guard your atmosphere like your life depends on it, write this in the comments right now. Not this time, because what I'm about to show you next will give you the weapon you need to win this battle. But first, you had to see what's at stake. Listen to me, chosen one. Everything I just told you about Tuesday, the warning, the danger, the shadow falling across your week, it wasn't meant to terrify you. It was meant to prepare you. Because what's coming next in your life is too fragile to be dropped. You see, some of you have been sitting in that living room, staring at those same four walls for the last decade, thinking God stopped writing chapters in your story. You looked at your age, looked at your bank account, looked at your body that doesn't move like it used to, and you whispered to yourself in the dark, "My time has passed. The best parts are over. I'm just waiting now." But what if I told you that you didn't know something? What if I told you that God saved the best chapter for last? There's a reason you're still breathing. There's a reason your heart is still beating. There's a reason you woke up this morning when so many others didn't. And it has nothing to do with luck or medicine or good genetics. You're still here because heaven has been preparing something so magnificent, so powerful, so precisely orchestrated that it could only be delivered to someone who has been refined by decades of fire. Think about Moses, 80 years old when God called him from that burning bush. 80. The world would have written him off. Social security age, retirement village material. But God said, "Now you're ready. Now you understand suffering. Now you know what it means to depend on me completely." And for the next 40 years, Moses didn't just survive, he led millions, split seas, and spoke face to face with the Almighty. Think about Anna the prophetess. Luke chapter 2 tells us she was 84 years old, spending day and night in the temple. People probably walked past her thinking she was just another elderly widow going through the motions. But when baby Jesus was brought through those doors, she was the first to recognize the Messiah. Her age wasn't her limitation, it was her qualification. She had prayed long enough, waited long enough, believed long enough to recognize what younger eyes couldn't see. And Caleb, oh beloved, Caleb was 85 when he stood before Joshua and declared, "Give me this mountain, not give me a rocking chair, not give me a quiet retirement, give me this mountain, give me the giants, give me the impossible." Joshua 14:11 records his words, "I am as strong today as I was in the day that Moses sent me. Just as my strength was then, so now is my strength." Your age isn't a disqualification, it's your confirmation. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Every wrinkle on your face is a line of wisdom. Every scar on your heart is proof that you survived what was meant to destroy you. Every year you've lived has been building spiritual muscle that can carry weight the younger generation can't even imagine lifting. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what keeps me awake at night praying for people just like you. You've been so focused on what you've lost that you can't see what you've gained. You're mourning your youth when God is celebrating your readiness. You're counting your limitations when heaven is counting your qualifications. The blessing that's coming, and it is coming, beloved, it's not something you could have handled at 30. At 40, you would have taken the credit. At 50, you would have built an empire around yourself. But now you know better. Now you know that every good and perfect gift comes from above. Now you're desperate enough to give God all the glory. This is why Tuesday matters. This is why that one small mistake could destroy everything. Because what God is preparing to place in your hands isn't just for you. It's for your children who stopped believing. It's for your grandchildren who need to see that God still moves. It's for your community that's drowning in despair and needs someone who's walked through the valley and came out singing. Tuesday isn't blocking your miracle. Tuesday is preparing you to carry it without dropping it. You've been like a letter sitting in heaven's mailroom, fully written, fully sealed, fully addressed to this exact moment in history. And Tuesday is the day the postman starts walking toward your door. But if you're not home when he arrives, if you're distracted, if you're complaining, if you're making that one mistake I'm about to reveal, that letter goes back unopened. Some of you right now are feeling something stirring in your chest. Something ancient, something that's been asleep for years is waking up. That's not your imagination, that's recognition. Your spirit recognizing that this message isn't random. You didn't stumble on this video by accident. You were summoned here. The seed that's been buried in the soil of your suffering, it's cracking open right now, this Tuesday. And what's about to break through the surface will astound everyone who counted you out, everyone who wrote you off, everyone who thought your story was ending when God was just turning the page to the climax. But the next thing I'm about to reveal will make the entire Tuesday warning make sense, because there's a specific mistake, one that looks so innocent, so normal, so harmless, that's destroyed more late-life blessings than any enemy attack ever could. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to describe is already happening in your body right now. You might have felt it this morning when you woke up. You might be feeling it at this exact moment as my voice reaches your ears. There's a heaviness settling over your chest. Not the kind that comes from bad news or worry about bills. This is different. This is ancient. This is the weight of two realms colliding. Heaven's preparation meeting Earth's resistance. And your body, dear one, your flesh and bones and beating heart, they're caught right in the middle of that cosmic collision. You'll feel it in your chest. You'll feel it in your breath. You'll feel it in your thoughts that won't stop racing at 2 a.m. Some of you woke up Tuesday morning 3 weeks ago and couldn't explain why you felt so irritable. Your spouse said good morning and something in you wanted to snap. Your grandchild called and you almost didn't answer. A friend reached out and you felt bothered, annoyed, agitated for no reason you could name. That wasn't you having a bad day. That was spiritual warfare disguised as mood. Here's what the enemy knows that you don't. When God is about to release something massive into your life, your spiritual sensitivity goes into overdrive. You become a lightning rod for every attack, every distraction, every emotional trigger hell can manufacture. Because if Satan can get you to react wrongly on the day of your breakthrough, he can delay your destiny by years. Years, beloved, not days, years. Think about Moses at the rock in Numbers 20. God told him to speak to the rock and water would flow for 2 million thirsty Israelites. But Moses was frustrated. He was tired. He was triggered by their complaining. So instead of speaking, he struck the rock in anger. Water came out. The miracle still happened, but Moses lost his right to enter the promised land because of one moment of wrong reaction. One moment, one Tuesday, one decision made in irritation instead of obedience. Your enemy is not the person who triggers you on Tuesday. Your enemy is the reaction. That driver who cuts you off in traffic, that's not your enemy. Your reaction is being tested. That phone call with news that makes your blood pressure spike, that's not your battle. Your response is being measured. That moment when someone says something that resurrects an old wound you thought you'd buried 30 years ago, that person is not your problem. Your willingness to let that wound reopen is what hell is betting on. Because here's what's happening in the unseen realm. Every time you're on the verge of breakthrough, the enemy sends a trigger. He knows your history. He knows what buttons to push. He knows that unresolved anger from 1987. He remembers that betrayal from your first marriage. He's kept a file on every hurt you've tried to forget. And on Tuesday, that specific, targeted, appointed Tuesday when God is moving, he deploys those memories like weapons. Suddenly you'll remember conversations from 40 years ago. Faces you haven't thought about in decades will flood your mind. Old wounds you thought were healed will throb like they're fresh. Bitterness you buried will claw its way back to the surface. This is not depression, dear one. This is discernment activation. Your spirit is trying to warn you that something's coming. The pressure drop you feel before a tornado touches down. The rush of air in the subway tunnel 60 seconds before the train arrives. That's what's happening in your soul right now. Your spiritual senses are screaming that a moment of decision is approaching, and everything depends on how you respond. James 1:19 cuts straight to the bone. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Slow to anger, not never angry. Slow, controlled, intentional. Because righteous people can have righteous anger, but uncontrolled anger in a divine moment will cost you your promised land. When the air shifts, the test begins. You'll know it's happening because time will feel strange. Minutes will feel like hours. Small irritations will feel enormous. Words people speak will hit differently. Everything will feel amplified, urgent, pressurized. That's not paranoia. That's the spiritual atmosphere condensing before breakthrough. And here's the part that's going to save your life. If you recognize the signs early, you will win. The moment you feel that unexplainable heaviness, you don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" You ask, "What's God preparing that the enemy is trying to sabotage?" The second you notice old memories resurfacing, you don't dive into those emotions. You recognize the strategy and you declare out loud, "My past will not poison my future." This is war, chosen one, but it's a war you can win by simply refusing to react the way hell expects you to. If you've felt those signs before, if you've experienced that strange heaviness on a Tuesday, if old wounds have suddenly reopened for no logical reason, if you felt triggered and couldn't explain why, drop in the comments right now. I know this feeling. Because what I'm about to show you next will reveal the exact mistake that turns that feeling into a trap and how to escape it before it costs you everything God has been preparing. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to show you isn't theory. This is the battlefield map the enemy has been using against you for decades, and you never even knew you were looking at it. You see, the devil doesn't improvise. He's been studying you longer than you've been alive. He knows your triggers better than you know them yourself. He's memorized your weak spots, catalogued your breaking points, and he's been waiting for the exact Tuesday when God is about to release something so powerful into your life that if it manifests, hell's grip on your family ends forever. So he deploys 3 surgical strikes, 3 razor-sharp tactics designed specifically for that day. And if you don't recognize them, you'll walk right into the trap thinking you're just having a bad day. Tactic number 1. Provocation through familiar voices. The voice that provokes you on Tuesday will sound familiar, because it is familiar. This is what separates spiritual warfare from spiritual accident. The enemy doesn't use strangers on test days. He doesn't send random people to disturb your peace. No, he uses the people who have access to your heart. Your adult daughter who knows exactly which buttons to push. Your son who's been distant for months suddenly calls with criticism that cuts like a knife. Your spouse who hasn't mentioned that 20-year-old argument in a decade suddenly brings it up over breakfast. You think it's coincidence? You think after all these years of peace, they just happened to explode on the same Tuesday God scheduled your breakthrough. Here's what's really happening. 1 Samuel 16:14 tells us, "The Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. Even King Saul, anointed, chosen, powerful, became a weapon in the enemy's hand when he lost spiritual alignment." The people closest to you can become the enemy's mouthpiece without even knowing it. That phone call that makes your blood pressure spike, that text message that resurrects old pain, that comment at the dinner table that feels like it was designed to destroy your peace. It wasn't random, beloved. It was strategic. And the reason it hurts so much is because it came from someone you love. But here's the key. The provocation isn't the attack. Your reaction is. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you. He just needs you to destroy your own alignment by responding in anger, in bitterness, in words you can't take back. Tactic number 2. Emotional magnification. What is normally a 3 becomes an 8. A whisper becomes a shout. You've lived long enough to know your own emotional baseline, haven't you? You know how you usually respond to stress. You know your normal level of frustration when the bills pile up, when your arthritis flares, when the pharmacy gets your prescription wrong again. But on Tuesday, on that specific Tuesday, everything feels different. That minor annoyance that you would normally brush off suddenly feels unbearable. That small disappointment that wouldn't usually bother you becomes a crushing weight on your chest. You find yourself crying over things that normally wouldn't make you blink. And you think you're losing your mind. You think you're getting weaker with age. You wonder if this is what happens when you get older. Everything hurts more, everything matters more, everything overwhelms you more easily. No, dear one. What you're experiencing is supernatural amplification. The enemy takes your real emotions and turns up the volume until you can't think straight. He magnifies your legitimate concerns until they become all-consuming panic. He takes your natural sadness and inflates it into depression so thick you can barely breathe. Ephesians 4:27 warns us, "Neither give place to the devil." That word place in Greek is topos. It means territory, ground, opportunity. Every time you allow your emotions to be magnified beyond reason, you're giving the enemy real estate in your mind. That medical bill that arrived on Tuesday, it's real. But the terror you feel isn't proportional to the problem. That argument with your spouse, it happened. But the rage rising in your chest is being fed from a darker source. That mistake you made 40 years ago that suddenly feels like it happened yesterday. The memory is real, but the shame crushing you right now is supernaturally enhanced. The enemy doesn't need to lie to you. He just needs to make the truth feel 1,000 times heavier than it actually is. Tactic number 3. False urgency. The enemy will make you feel like you must respond now, in this moment, before you pray, before you think, before you breathe. This is the killing blow, chosen one, because false urgency is what makes you act out of alignment. That text from your daughter that makes your blood boil. The enemy whispers, "Respond now, or she'll think she got away with it." That financial crisis, make a decision right now, or everything will collapse. That opportunity that seems too good to pass up, say yes immediately, or someone else will take it. But here's what Proverbs 19:2 tells us. It is not good to have zeal without knowledge, nor to be hasty and miss the way. The moment you rush, you lose alignment. The second you act out of panic instead of peace, you've already lost the battle. And this is where 70, 80, 90 years of life should have taught you something precious. Nothing truly from God requires you to abandon wisdom for speed. God's timing always includes time to pray, time to breathe, time to hear His voice above the noise. But there's one more tactic, the hidden fourth tactic, the one operating beneath all three of these. And if you miss it, everything I just told you won't matter. Because this fourth tactic is the spider at the center of the web, and it's already working in your life right now. The question is, are you ready to see it? Listen to me very carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to tell you might be the most dangerous truth you'll hear all year. Because the mistake that will destroy your Tuesday breakthrough won't come dressed in darkness. It won't announce itself with thunder and lightning. It won't knock down your door at midnight screaming threats. No, beloved, it will come softly, gently, wrapped in kindness, delivered with a smile. The enemy doesn't always roar. Sometimes he whispers, and that whisper, it sounds exactly like love. You see, you've been watching for the wolf. You've been guarding against the obvious attacks. You've been praying against the enemy you can recognize. But what about the Trojan horse? What about the gift that gets wheeled right through your gates because it looks so beautiful, so harmless, so considerate? Think about your life right now. How many times this past month has someone reached out to you with what seemed like genuine concern? Your daughter, who never calls, suddenly checking in. Your son, who's been distant for years, suddenly asking how you're doing. That friend from church who abandoned you during your darkest season, suddenly wanting to catch up over coffee. And you thought, finally they see me. Finally, they care. But here's what your spirit sensed that your heart wanted to ignore. Something felt off. Their questions probed too deep. Their concern felt rehearsed. Their kindness came with conditions attached like invisible strings. Proverbs 26-24, 2:5 cuts straight to the bone. Enemies disguise themselves with their lips, but in their hearts they harbor deceit. Though their speech is charming, do not believe them. Do not believe them. Not because everyone is evil, not because you should become cynical and closed off, but because you've lived long enough to know that the most effective weapons are often wrapped in velvet, the sharpest swords are hidden beneath silk, and the deadliest poison is served in golden cups. Let me tell you about Margaret, 83 years old, faithful servant of God for 6 decades. She'd been praying for a financial breakthrough for months. Medical bills were crushing her. Her arthritis medication alone cost more than her monthly Social Security check. She was 3 months behind on rent, 1 notice away from eviction. Then on a Tuesday morning, her nephew called, the one who hadn't spoken to her in 5 years. Sweet as honey he was. "Aunt Margaret, I've been thinking about you. I know things have been hard. I want to help." Her heart leaped. God had answered. Finally, he came over that afternoon with papers. "A reverse mortgage," he said. "You'll get the money you need, stay in your home, and I'll handle all the details." All she had to do was sign, right there, right then, Tuesday afternoon. She almost did it. Her hand was literally holding the pen when something whispered in her spirit. "Wait. Just wait." She told him she needed to pray about it. His face changed. The kindness evaporated like morning mist. "You don't trust me? After I came all the way here to help you." The manipulation was instant. The guilt trip was vicious, but she held firm. 2 days later, her pastor looked at those papers and nearly wept. That reverse mortgage would have stripped her of everything: her home, her equity, her children's inheritance. All of it funneled to her nephew through legal loopholes she'd never understand. The soft doorway almost destroyed her. Here's what breaks my heart about this tactic. The enemy knows that after 70, 80, 90 years of life, you're tired of fighting. You're weary of being strong. You're desperate for someone to genuinely care. So he sends people who speak the language of concern but carry the agenda of control. They offer help that creates dependency. They give advice that serves their interests. They show up at precisely the moment when you're most vulnerable, and it feels like answered prayer. But Romans 16:18 warns us, "By smooth talk and flattery they deceive the minds of naive people." Smooth talk, not rough talk, not obvious evil. Smooth, polished, convincing. The test on Tuesday may not feel like a test at all. It may feel like relief, like rescue, like the help you've been begging God to send. Someone offering to handle your finances because you're getting older. Someone suggesting you should update your will, and they know a great lawyer. Someone proposing a small favor that requires your signature, your bank account, your trust. And because it comes wrapped in kindness, because it sounds so reasonable, because you're so tired of carrying everything alone, you almost say yes. You almost open that soft doorway. You almost let the Trojan horse roll right into your fortress. But chosen one, I need you to understand something that could save your entire destiny. Kindness without discernment is not virtue, it's vulnerability. Compassion without wisdom is not love, it's a liability. Jesus himself said in Matthew 10:16, "Be as shrewd as serpents and as innocent as doves." Shrewd, strategic, discerning, not paranoid, but prepared, not cynical, but careful. On Tuesday, when that call comes, when that visit happens, when that offer arrives dressed in concern and wrapped in affection, you need to ask yourself one question: is this heaven's provision or hell's distraction? Because, beloved, what God is preparing for you is so magnificent that the enemy will stop at nothing to destroy it. And his most effective weapon isn't the one that scares you. It's the one that soothes you right into surrender. If this truth just pierced your spirit, if you suddenly recognize the soft doorways you've been tempted to walk through, type it now. I see it now. But knowing the tactic isn't enough, because there's one final weapon the enemy will deploy on Tuesday. One last strategy that's so subtle, so personal, so perfectly timed that even the most discerning believers have fallen for it. And what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly how to recognize it before it's too late. Beloved chosen one, as we come to the end of this sacred moment together, I need you to remember 3 truths that will guard your soul this Tuesday and every day that follows. First, the enemy's tactics are real, but they are not unstoppable. When you recognize the distraction, the accusation, the division, and the soft doorway, you strip them of their power. Awareness is your armor. Second, what God is preparing for you is worth protecting. The breakthrough coming toward your life has been years in the making. Don't let one careless Tuesday steal what decades of faithfulness have earned. Third, Tuesday is not just a day of danger, it's a day of decision. The same 24 hours that could destroy your destiny can also establish it forever if you walk in wisdom, discernment, and Holy Spirit sensitivity. But hear me clearly, you are not walking this path alone. The God who has carried you through 70, 80, 90 years of life has not brought you this far to abandon you now. He is still working, still moving, still orchestrating miracles in the invisible realm. And beyond that, you have a community right here, thousands of brothers and sisters who understand your struggle, who believe in your calling, and who are ready to stand with you in prayer. So let me ask you this. Now that you know what's coming, now that you see the tactics, now that you understand the stakes, what will you do differently this Tuesday? Before you answer that question, join me in prayer. Wherever you are right now, close your eyes and let me speak over your life. Heavenly Father, I lift up every precious soul hearing these words. You see their Tuesday coming. You know the tests they'll face, the decisions they'll make, the battles they'll fight. Lord, I pray for supernatural discernment. Give them eyes to see what the enemy is hiding. Give them ears to hear your voice above every distraction. Give them courage to say no to what looks good but isn't God. Protect what you're preparing. Guard what you're building. Surround them with your angels. Cover them with your blood. Let this Tuesday be the day of their greatest victory, not their deepest regret. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Now, I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me what God spoke to your heart today. What tactic did you recognize? What decision are you making differently? Ask us to pray for you. This community is here for you. And please, share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Someone in your life is facing their own Tuesday test, and they need this warning, this wisdom, this weapon. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We're building something powerful here, a family of chosen ones who refuse to let the enemy steal what God has promised. Your Tuesday is coming, beloved, but now you're ready.